Lapin plays possum. Compere Bouquet never was sure whether or not he'd eaten that barrel of rum cake and that barrel of butter, but he did know that somehow Compere Lapin had got half of a good crop without doing but a speck of work, and that got his dander up. So when Lapin showed up, come planting time, talking about making another deal, Bouquet said, "No way, no how. You get your derriere to work on your own crop." Then he remembered a scraggly patch of land way back by the bayou that he never got around to working. "I tell you what I could do, though. I could rent you a field." "For how much?" asked Lapin. Bouquet thought the time was ripe to even the score with Lapin. So with a sly grin, he said, "We'd share the crop fair and square. I'd get the top of the plant, and you'd get all the rest." He could just see himself collecting sack after sack of cotton, while Lapin got nothing but roots and stems. Lapin shuffled his feet and scratched his head. Finally he said, "You drive a heap of a bargain, Bouquet, but a feller's got to make a living. I guess you got yourself a deal." So next summer, come cropping time, Bouquet trekked off to the back field ready to collect all of Lapin's cotton. To his surprise, he found that rabbit stretched out under a mimosa tree, drinking a mint julep and overseeing all his cousins and nieces and nephews as they hoed the field. And there, as far as the eye could see, stretched sweet potato vines greener than $10 bills and thicker than a passel of lawyers in cahoots. "I'm right glad you came by," said Compere Lapin, chewing on a mint leaf. "Soon as you collect your vines, I'll get to digging my sweet taters." "Sweet potatoes!" roared Bouquet. "Why, you scrawny, slippery little scoundrel, those vines don't amount to nothing but a compost heap." He stormed off, blowing steam like a locomotive engine, and that left Lapin to collect a cellar full of plump sweet potatoes that kept him fat and sassy till the buzzing of the spring bees. Next year, Compere Bouquet was determined not to get hornswoggled by Compere Lapin. So when the rabbit came by to talk about renting the field again, Bouquet said, "No, sirree, this is my land and you ain't cheating me twice." "Why, Compere Bouquet, I never cheated you," said Lapin. "You made the deal yourself. I only gave you what you wanted." "Well, I ain't no fool. I'll rent you that field, but this time you take the tops and I get the rest." Lapin looked all droopy. "You're a hard straw boss, I guarantee. But it's a deal." Come harvest time, Bouquet couldn't wait to get the best of Lapin, along with all those plump sweet potatoes. But when he looked out over Lapin's field, he couldn't believe his eyeballs. There was clump after plump clump of rice waving in the bayou breeze. "I'm right glad to see you," said Lapin. "I done harvested the grain heads off my rice crop. Now you can haul off your rice straw and your roots." "Straw and roots!" sputtered Bouquet, heading home empty-handed. But like a gambler who's got to play just one more hand of poker, he was sure he could figure out a way to win. By planting time, he thought he'd had a plan all worked out. "This time," he said, looming over Lapin like a mule over a mouse, "you can rent my field if you give me both the tops and the bottoms." "But, Bouquet," said Lapin, "that don't leave nothing for poor little old me." "Why, you can have the middles," said Bouquet with a chuckle, figuring he'd bested Lapin for sure this time. "I don't see how you expect me to live on that, but I declare you got me over a barrel." Lapin sighed as they shook on the deal. Come harvest time, Bouquet took his wagon out to the field to see whether Lapin had grown him sweet potatoes or rice. "You're just in time, neighbor," said Lapin from atop a loaded wagon. "We just finished picking all that good-for-nothing corn off the middles of the plants. I left you just what you wanted, some nice fat tassels and some big, strong roots." Tassels and roots! Well, that did it. Bouquet vowed to have nothing to do with Lapin, not ever again. So the next year Bouquet farmed his land all by his lonesome. He plowed and he planted, he weeded and he hoed. Every once in a while, Lapin would drop by to see how the work was going. "Need some help?" he'd ask. "Not from you," Buki answered. When the crop was ready, he picked that cotton all by himself, loaded his cart, and headed to town. His crop fetched a pretty price, and all that money was burning a hole in Buki's pocket just about the time that hunger started knocking on his belly. So he bought himself a steaming kettle of seafood gumbo and another of sweetbread pudding. Taking a little taste of each, just to tide him over until he got home, he loaded his loot onto the cart and took off down the road. Meanwhile, never let it be said that Lapin heard opportunity knock without answering the door. He'd spent the afternoon lollygagging in the shade by the side of the road, all the while keeping one ear pressed to the ground. When he heard Buki's cartwheels coming from town and smelled that gumbo and bread pudding, he hauled himself out into the middle of the road, plopped himself down, and held his breath till he looked deader than a possum playing possum. "Whoa!" said Buki to his mule. "It looks like a rabbit done bit the dust. It's a good thing I got plenty of provisions here. I might have picked up that fat old thing for supper, and who knows how long it's been a-layin' there." He clucked to the mule and rode on. Well, as soon as Buki was out of sight, Lapin jumped up, hightailed it through the woods, and laid himself down in the road again, just as Buki was coming around the bend. The smell of all that food was teasing his taste buds, but he held his breath and made like he was dead. "Whoa!" said Buki to his mule. "Another rabbit's expired. They must all be dying of eternal laziness. Serves 'em right." He clucked to his mule and rode on. Well, guess what? Lapin got up and raced pell-mell through the woods, threw himself down on the ground, and imitated a dead doornail. "Whoa!" said Buki when he saw him. He scratched his head. "Darned if that don't beat all. Now I just can't resist taking this nice fat one home with me. I'll make me a rabbit sauce piquante for sure." He got down, picked up that possum-playing rabbit, and tossed him into the back of the cart. Then Buki scratched his head. "Come to think of it, seems to me that first rabbit I passed bore a strong resemblance to Compere Lapin. I don't care if I've already got more food than a horse has flies. I'm going to run back and get that scoundrel." As soon as Buki was out of sight, Lapin raised himself up from the dead and grabbed the reins of the cart, ready to make off with all that gumbo and all that bread pudding. But because it was his nature, he thought up something better. He plucked some hair from that mule's tail and ran over to a big pothole in the road. Then, just like he was planting a rose bush, he stuck the mule hair down into the hole and pulled up a little dirt around it. He skedaddled back to the cart, gave a giddy-up to the mule, and drove on home. After Compere Lapin had consumed a king-size bowl of gumbo, he had a king-size serving of sweetbread pudding. He stashed the kettles in his cellar, hid the mule and cart in the barn, and headed back up the road to see how Compere Buki was getting along. There was Buki, waist deep in a fresh excavation and working a shovel like crazy. "Say there, Compere Buki," said Lapin. "What in tarnation are you doing?" At the sound of Lapin's voice, Buki shot out of that hole like a pea out of a pea shooter. You're alive," he sputtered. But I thought—" "What's the matter, mon ami?" said Lapin. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Buki's knees gave out from under him, and he patted his pounding heart. I dropped something up the road a ways," he panted. "And when I went back to get it, my mule and my cart must have fell in this here pothole. I got to dig 'em out before that mule smothers to death." He reached out to touch Lapin. "You sure enough alive, ain't you?" "Alive and kicking," said Lapin. "What makes you think your mule fell in that hole?" "Because his tail's sticking out of it, of course." Compere Lapin sat down to enjoy the goings-on until Compere Buki finally gave up. Then, feeling kindly, he invited Buki home for dinner. By then, Buki's belly was so empty that he followed Lapin home and slurped down a bowl of the thick, spicy soup. "I do declare, Lapin," he said, wiping his mouth, "this is almost as good as the gumbo that fell down that pothole. It's right kindly of you to share it with me." Compere Lapin helped himself to another bowl, so Buuk wouldn't have to eat alone. "Why, think nothing of it," he grinned. "I'm just being neighborly." Then he rubbed his bulging belly, wondering what Buuk would provide for him next.